most people would probably say, oh man, I wished I had asked myself, why not now in a deeper way and made the move? Because they didn't.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Just let go. Welcome to your new year. So many of us have things that we want to happen in the next 365 days, things that we have visualized, goals, lists, resolutions. Whatever your approach is to the new year, the number one thing I've found to help me actually achieve what I want to achieve is support, is surrounding myself with like-minded people. And just a reminder that you can do that pretty easily within our private Facebook group. The Why Not Now private group on Facebook, you can search for it and join and have conversations with individuals that are going through things like yourself, get feedback, and that's where all of our exclusive information, content, news comes first. And if you haven't already, please join us on Instagram at Why Not Now is the new handle, the new account, and we'd love to connect there too. This interview had me shaking in my boots. So Cal Fussman is on the show today. And if you haven't heard of his name before, you've probably actually read some of his work. He is an American journalist and author, and in my opinion, one of the top American journalists. And when I was studying to learn how to interview people and how to do this podcast stuff, I studied him. I studied Larry King. I studied Howard Stern, Oprah, Terry Gross, just like the it people. So this was a little nerve-wracking to me to flip the tables, to turn the tables. But Cal is, not only is he so wise, I think one of the things you'll realize as you listen to him is his storytelling abilities are unmatched. So if you just listen to how he tells stories, you will take away a ton. A fascinating component about this interview is that he has just become really an entrepreneur himself. And so as someone as talented and as experienced as he is, he talks through what it's like to be a rookie at becoming an entrepreneur. Just for a little bit of background, Cal Fussman has interviewed leaders and individuals like Mikhail Gorbachev, Jimmy Carter, Ted Kennedy, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, Robert De Niro, George Clooney, Barbara Walters, Muhammad Ali, you name it. And he's pretty brilliant at his craft, let me tell you. So without further ado, here's Cal. Enjoy. Being able to design my own day and do it in the most efficient way is a non-negotiable for me. I'm a bit of a time management nerd, so when I find something that allows me to be more efficient and effective to get the most out of my day, I want to share it with everyone. So here's the scoop. I have a new tool in my productivity tool belt, and it's called Monday.com. My team and I have never felt more organized professionally and personally. And my to-do list is no longer the boss of me. I feel more in control because every project, initiative, date, and task is captured and organized in one place. And my team is in the loop and involved every step of the way. We are in lockstep. Monday.com is like having a brand new operating system. Everything has its own home, deadline. You can see the team members associated with the tasks, and it's color coordinated, so you can easily navigate your own task list. We all have multifaceted jobs, businesses, and lives. With Monday, you're able to keep all of these components organized in their own compartments, but you're also one click away from seeing the big picture and how they all integrate together. Creating systems and procedures within your day and business saves a lot of time. For example, my team and I have a dedicated Monday.com board for this very podcast. Did you know that there are 28 steps involved in getting one podcast ready for air? It's the same exact process every single time. And it's a system that we have put into place. So we know the various key steps are assigned to certain people, and we've mapped out the entire process from start to finish within this one board. This allows us to be streamlined. It cuts back on the amount of emails exchanged as well as the amount of meetings needed. One feature I love is that my social media content calendar is built inside of Monday.com. I finally have one that I actually use, I like, and it's embedded into my overall calendar as well. Another feature we use every single day is the Google Doc integration. You know I love a good spreadsheet. I can pull them into Monday.com and edit them right there versus having 97 tabs open on my computer, which is extremely distracting and inefficient. If how we spend our days is how we spend our lives, then I can't think of anything more important than using the time in our days wisely. Head to hey.monday.com/Amy Jo Martin to start your free trial today. That's hey.monday.com/Amy Jo Martin. Cal, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
I am absolutely delighted based on the question I'm going to get.
Absolutely. We will get right there. And I have to tell everyone that's joined us that the first thing I mentioned to you when we hopped into this was I'm nervous because I studied you when I was first trying to learn how to interview people. So let's just preface it with this is a big deal to me, and I'm so grateful to have you on the show. But let's hop right in the spirit of why not now. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you asked yourself, why not now?
I've been doing that all of my life. And I guess the word big is in question here because it's hard to know what a big decision is based on where you're at in life. I can recall like the first big decision that I made that way. And that would take you back to the time I was about 22. So you got to understand that as a kid, it was my dream to do two things: to write a magazine story about Muhammad Ali, which I would one day be able to do for the cover of Esquire, and two, to be a sports columnist for a major metropolitan newspaper. Now, that may not seem like a big thing now because newspapers are kind of dying, but back in like the late 60s and early 70s, that was just an amazing job, man. You were like the mayor of your city, and you didn't even have any problems to solve. You just went and saw all the great sporting events, wrote about them, went out to dinner, went to the bars, you're talking with people. It seemed like the dream job. And so I went to college at the University of Missouri, and they have a famous journalism school there. And when I got out, about 2 to 3 months later, there I am sitting ringside while Muhammad Ali wins the heavyweight championship for the third and final time. About a year after that, I'm in St. Louis writing for the Post-Dispatch, and I see my face over a column in that newspaper. And that's my dream. That's what I was living for. I'm 22, and I won't belabor this because I don't want to take up 20 minutes, but some stuff happened that made me really think because my situation was kind of a difficult one. Here I am, 22, and when I was hired by this newspaper, basically the pitch was, look, Cal, we want you to become our next columnist. The problem is we've got a staff full of people that are like between the ages of 36 and 50, and they all want the same column too. And so if we bring you in from the outside and give you this column immediately, there's going to be a mutiny. So what we're recommending is that you start out as like the second guy. You just follow everybody and learn the ropes. And then gradually, after a little while, do great work and you'll work your way into it. Well, I came in, I was ready to go. And, there were a few people on that staff who smelled what was happening and they didn't like it. And so it put me in kind of an uncomfortable position. And I looked around and I said to myself, okay, I just saw my face in the newspaper over a column. That was my dream. I've achieved it. Am I going to stay here, work this out? And if I do, basically, this is it for the rest of my life. I'm going to spend the next 40 or 50 years doing the same thing over and over. And I just left, got in a little Honda. And what I did is at the same time, right about the same time, I got a call from a guy named John A. Walsh, who people in the industry would later know as the guy who started SportsCenter, developed SportsCenter for ESPN. Da-da-da, da-da-da.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he was starting a sports magazine in New York. It was called Inside Sports. He'd been the editor of Rolling Stone. And he had reached out to me about writing. And I just called him up. I said, John, I'm coming to New York. I don't know what's going to happen, but will you just make sure I can eat? And he said, come on down, Cal.
Oh, wow.
So this magazine was run or sort of owned by the people who owned the Washington Post and Newsweek, and it was set in the Newsweek building in New York. So I show up the first day to meet everybody. It's a Friday afternoon. It's about 4:30. And as I'm coming in the door, there is like a dolly loaded with cases of beer right in front of me. And I'm following this dolly. We get past the security, whatever, and the dolly goes in an elevator with me. And it stops at the same floor as I do. It comes out the elevator, and it literally leads me into the office of Inside Sports, where a party is breaking out. And I was at home. And that decision basically set in motion a million other things, including my marriage, my kids. I mean, there's no way my life would have had any resemblance to what it is now if I had stayed in St. Louis. Now, that might have been a great life, but it was a very different life and certainly a more provincial life. So that was probably the first moment.
When you got in the Honda and you just left.
It's 1,000 miles from St. Louis to New York. And, just stuffed. I didn't own very much at the time, just stuffed everything in the car and headed out. And it was really like getting on the road to someplace new It's just one of the great feelings of all time. I've done it over and over and over. It's almost addictive. It's a little harder once you're married and with kids. But you know what? My third child is about to get out of high school after next year. And the other two are finishing up college. Some more road trips may be starting soon.
I love that. And this why not now moment literally shaped your career and life trajectory. And given you are all about the questions and the fact that if you change your questions, you change your life, right? What does why not now mean to you? Because clearly you navigate your days with this question, big, small, all types of different decisions. How do you literally apply it?
What does why not now mean to me? I say it means Amy Jo Martin. Think of it this way. You've done what? 200 podcasts with amazing guests about this question. You could probably do this podcast with 1 billion people. And you want to know the sad thing about it? Most people would probably say, oh man, I wished I had asked myself, why not now in a deeper way and made the move, because they didn't. I'll give you an example. So just to pick up the story where I left it off, I go into New York and now I'm having the time of my life at this magazine. It wasn't even a job. It was like every day was an event. I don't know if you remember the gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson. He was one of John A. Walsh's writers, and he'd show up at the bar after work, and you'd be sitting next to him throwing back shots with Hunter S. Thompson. And it's basically pushed me to a whole new place. And then about 1.5 years later, this magazine goes out of business. And there I am. I just had the time of my life, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. I could look around for another job. I could go back to St. Louis and see if they'll take me back at the newspaper. But I just asked myself your question. And I realized I had never really picked grapes in Montpellier, France. I'd met a woman from Montpellier, and she said, oh, you got to come and pick the grapes. And so I said to myself, okay, look, at this point, I think I'm 23 and a half or right around there. I say, you know what? I got to go. Call up my mom and dad, and I tell my mom, I think it'd be wise to just take off, spend a little time traveling, clear my head, figure out what I want to do next. And she says, oh, that's a wonderful idea, Cal. Well, little did she know that when she said it, I was going to take off and not come back for about 10 years. Because once I did go off and started to travel, it completely changed my life. I don't want to use the word addicted to it, but I was in a position where I was getting up almost every day. I was getting up every day, not knowing what was going to happen to my life, who I was going to meet, where I was going to go, where I was going to sleep. And it was this trip that really taught me how to interview, because I'd get on trains and buses and I'd have to look for an empty seat next to somebody who looked interesting, somebody who looked like I could trust, somebody who looked like might be able to trust me. So I'm walking down the aisle of that train station, that train or bus, looking for that empty seat. And once I find that right seat and that right person, I sit down, and now I've got to do something that, when I look back on it at this moment, seems pretty amazing. I've got to start up a conversation that by the time it ends, by the time that person gets off, that person is going to turn to me and say, hey, why don't you come home and stay at my place? And I need that to happen because I don't have enough money to spend in hotels night after night. So I literally needed somebody to take me home almost every night. And it was the connections that I was able to make on those trains and buses that really taught me the nonverbal cues to interviewing, just how to gain trust simply by using tone of voice and listening. And those 10 years really shaped who I became, so that when I returned to the United States and began to write for Esquire magazine, and began to do a column called What I've Learned, which put me in a position where I was interviewing the icons who shaped the last half century, like Mikhail Gorbachev and Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson. Because of that traveling, I was able to step into those interviews in a very unique way. I wasn't the journalist that they were seeing all the time. I was the traveler. And they responded to it like so many of the travelers I met on the trains and the buses. And these interviews, they really went to very unique places. And so you could see all these decisions to just say, just go, try it. They completely shaped who I am. And I'm going to say one other thing. There was a guy right at the time I was about to take off who said to me, man, I wish I could go. I said, well, come on, let's go. Just get up a little money and you can join me for a little while. And he said, I can't, my job. I said, but you don't like your job. He said, yeah, I know, but it's the only job I got. And so he stayed at the job, and decades later, he was still there. So really, if you ask yourself that question and you go, something's going to happen just by your energy moving out into this new space.
So good. So this feeling where, and I hear you say, I got to go. I mean, whether it was in St. Louis headed to New York in your Honda, whether it was picking up and going to sample the grapes in France, can you tell us a little bit more about that moment, that dissect that I got to go feeling? Is it a physiological feeling that there's no pros and cons being weighed, you just feel it from like an internal GPS? Or what happens? Is there any other color you can give us to these I gotta go moments?
Well, there are people who sit down with a yellow legal pad and throw a line down the middle and write pros and cons.
Right.
And they list them all and they make a sensible decision, or maybe it's not even a sensible decision, but at least it's sensible in that they listed all the pros and cons. For me, it's incredibly gut-driven. And generally, when my gut tells me to go, I go and good things happen. And not only that, when my gut tells me to go and I don't go, bad things happen.
You override?
Most of that has happened to me. I'm not a money guy, but I am able to see certain trends. So I was watching this stock called Red Hat. This is many, many years ago. And we had the tech meltdown. It must have been in the early part of the century. And, this stock was up very high. It went down to $3 a share. And I saw that there was some interest from IBM in this company. And I just said, there's no way this company's going out of business. But a lot of other companies were. And so I said, I'm going to throw everything I got into this company. Now, as soon as I do that, I got 50 people yelling at me, "Oh, you're an idiot. Don't do it. No, no, no." And let me see if I can call up what Red Hat is at now, just to give you an idea. So it was at 3. just typing this in on Google Finance. I don't really do this. I'm not a tech guy, but just to give you an idea, I hope this will tell you. Maybe you can hear the clicking of my keyboard.
Yes, it's adding amazing ambiance, and
so
we're ready for our insider tips.
It was $3 a share.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's $177.72. So there's a case of me not following my gut and saying, okay, I won't do it. And my problem is, and maybe this is really the answer to your question, like you're saying to me, pros, cons, make it logical. For me, there is no like middle ground on this. If I'm going to go, I'm all in. I'm not going to only go halfway. Because if you get on the road and you're walking down the aisle of that bus, you can't be in it halfway. You gotta throw yourself into the journey. And now, like anybody with money will tell you, look, you don't do that. You put at most half in, or 10% or 20%. Mm-hmm. But when I fall in love, I fall in love. I don't fall in love 10% and then see if it's better the next month. I go 100% all in. So that's the feeling. It may be very different from a lot of people who are weighing some really like serious decisions based on where they're at in life. But whoever's listening, if they're making a strategic decision on whether they got to leave something that they have in the hand to try something that they have no idea if it's going to work out, if it's about the future against the past, well, I say you better choose the future because the future is coming fast.
Amazing. And I love what you added about the energy you bring with you, with such a key piece to the formula. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. Cal, you've been navigating this entrepreneurial world over the last couple of years, although some could say that you've really been doing this all your life because of the nature and way you live your life. But tell me about this journey the last couple of years as you've learned and transitioned into some of these new things that you're doing, and even with your podcast, with Big Questions.
Well, it actually dovetails back to another podcast that you did with Alex Benayan.
Yes.
Because Alex, as you know, was a kid, and he's a man. I call him a kid because he could be my kid. He had just dropped out of USC to write a book about success. What happened is, just to summarize, so it makes sense to everybody, but I encourage everybody to go back and listen to that podcast because it's an amazing story. So basically, this kid is a Persian immigrant. His family came over from Iran a while back, and like many immigrant sons, he is bred to be a doctor. In his case, he was, from a Jewish family, and basically what happened after the Ayatollah came in the late 70s, early 80s, many of the Jewish families were forced to flee and lost everything they had. And so if you're thinking about it from his family's point of view, if you're a doctor, they can take away your wealth, they can take away your house, but they can't take away what you know. And you can always reestablish yourself. And so they bring him up from the time he can talk to be a doctor, to the point where, like, when he's in elementary school and Halloween comes along, I mean, they've got his Halloween costume to be Scrubs. So he's like even a doctor on Halloween at 8 years old. And he thinks he's a doctor. He gets to USC. Now he's got a stack of biology books in front of him. And he realizes, oh man, I don't want to be a doctor. And so he goes through a big crisis because he can't even tell his family this. And he just starts wondering about this word success. What is this word about? Who are the truly successful people in the world? And what were they doing when they were 18 and 19? And he goes to the library to find out. And he starts looking through books about Bill Gates and Lady Gaga. I don't even know if that was a book or magazine articles. And he can't find what he's looking for. And he decides to try and write the book that he wants to read. And this is problematic because he doesn't know how to write a book. And he thinks that he's just going to be able to send off an email to Bill Gates and Bill's going to say, yeah, Alex, come on up. So I'll spend a couple hours with you and tell you all about it. He naively goes about this escapade. And I think it took him like at least 6 years to pull this off. And sort of midway through, he realized he didn't know how to interview. And so he sought out Larry King, the broadcaster, to get some tips. I have breakfast with Larry every morning. And so when Alex comes in, Larry basically tells him, well, Cal's a writer. Cal's helped me write my books. Why don't you sit down with Cal? And a friendship forms. And I said, you know what? Whatever you need, I'll mentor you through this book. I'm not going to write a word, but I'll guide you through it. And it was kind of like being Mr. Miyagi to the Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. Basically, we got together about 3 nights a week for a couple hours a night. And this is over years now. The amazing thing that happened during this time was while I was mentoring him on how to write a book, he was mentoring me on how to step into this future of social media because I didn't have a Twitter account. I wasn't on Facebook. I had none of this stuff. And he basically looked at me and said, you're out there interviewing all the icons who've shaped the world for Esquire over the last 20 years. And if you're not on the internet, nobody knows who you are. I said, what do you mean nobody knows who I am? And he said, nobody knows who you are. And I realized in his worldview, he was right because nobody on the internet knew who I was. I was very under the radar. You'd have to know about Esquire magazine to know who I was. And so he started to get me up on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and show me how it all worked. During this process, another mentor that he had come upon, a guy named Elliot Bisnow, who founded Summit. It's a group that supports entrepreneurs. And every year they used to have a cruise called Summit at Sea where 4,000 entrepreneurs go and you'd hear speakers for like a whole weekend. And now they transferred it to LA, Summit LA. Through Alex's friendship with Elliot, I was invited to speak at Summit at Sea about the art of decoding the interview. I thought, I've never really done this. Nobody knows who I am in this crowd. Maybe 17 people will show up, but I get to go to the Caribbean for a couple of days, so why not have a good time? Well, I show up on this ship and they really marketed it well because they have people speaking all around the ship at the same time, so you can make a choice of who you want to go see. And they marketed it as decoding the art of the interview with Muhammad Ali and Donald Trump and Mikhail Gorbachev, as if you were coming to see them. And so when I step into the room, it's completely packed. There's billionaires sitting in the aisle, legs crossed, just jammed to the back wall. And there's a long line at the door, like it's some kind of nightclub. And I give this speech and get a standing ovation, and my life completely changed in that moment. Completely. That moment never would have happened if I hadn't stepped in to help mentor Alex through his book. So there you go. There is no way I would have known about Summit. There's no way I would have started to speak. And now it's what I do. And in fact, it's what I do, but it further transformed because once I went out and started to speak, I started to realize that many of the companies that I was speaking for, they actually had a little trouble telling their stories. And that's what I do. I ask questions to find stories, and then I tell stories. So I was perfectly positioned to do workshops and help companies tell their stories, which was really the first time in my life when I really think about this, that the work that I'm doing is helping to build something huge where people may be hired if the company gets more and more successful, and families are going to start, and careers will continue, and kids will be put through college, maybe because of the story I helped that company uncover, which was there all along. But most of the people working there were really busy doing their jobs, and it wasn't their job to come up with the story. So you can see through simple act of asking somebody if they needed help, my life completely changed again.
It's amazing to learn how that equal value exchange just started to surface. And I haven't necessarily heard this side of the story, your side. And I actually was on that boat, Summit at Sea. So I had no idea that was such a tipping point for you in this new phase, because in my opinion, that's when you really, that's when you came on my radar. So I figured that's just what you did. And so it's fascinating to see where people pick up on your story, where they've picked up along the journey. And your genius is just evolving, and it seems like the way you distribute it is shifting, but it's still that same essence and core, of course. So it's so cool. I'm sitting here smiling because I just picture you and Alex and Larry having breakfast in the mornings. And I have FOMO, by the way, so I would love to join you one day. But what happens at these breakfasts, Cal?
Got a seat at the table.
Oh, I am in. I was there last week. I wish I would have known. I'm coming back. What do you eat? What do you talk about? Is there an agenda? Tell us. I want to be like a fly on the wall.
It's different. People come on different days. I'm there every day. And it could be politics, it could be sports. Over time, we've had a lawyer at the table, a psychiatrist at the table, a surgeon at the table, so many people from so many different aspects of life. So whatever your problem is, you go to the table and somebody's got an answer for it.
Amazing.
That's the beauty of that. But I kind of want to just touch back on where we were, because there's a larger point that I think is important to mention, and that is that people often lock themselves into these descriptions of what they do. If you had asked me 5 years ago, Cal, what do you do? I said, well, I write a column for Esquire magazine called What I've Learned, where I interview people who've shaped the world over the last 50 years. Now, that's what I did, but think of it. If I'm asked a question now, what do you do? I say, I ask questions and tell stories. Now, that makes me applicable to a lot more people. There's only a few magazines that will allow me to do that column. Whereas asking questions and telling stories and helping people tell their stories that opens you up like all over the world to many, many different companies, to different publications. And so what I would recommend is that people look at themselves deeply and ask themselves, what do I really do? As opposed to just labeling themselves by the company that they work for. Because if you burrow down deep and find out what you really do, you may find out that you're applicable in a lot of different places that you never would have considered.
Such wise advice. It's easy for us to box ourselves in, and it becomes a bit of a jail, right? Like it's like we're putting up our own walls when we do that.
And the hard thing about that is that as we're doing it, it's our sense of self-confidence. I work for this place. I work for this company.
An identity.
Yeah, that's your identity. And so if you can just strip away the external trappings and look inside yourself and really ask yourself, what can I do? And where might that apply going forward? Because things are moving forward quite quick. And if you're not thinking about the future, you're going to be living in the past pretty soon.
Oh, wow. So what's one lesson, Cal, that you find yourself learning or needing to learn over and over?
I think what I have to learn how to do is curtail my curiosity. It's a hard thing because it is what makes me me. It is what gives me everything I have. But if you're as curious as I am, you're almost stopping to look at everything and stepping toward everything. And what I'm realizing is that at a certain point, you really have to narrow down on where you want to go. And like for me now, it's speaking and doing these workshops that help people tell their stories. I have to really look at all my opportunities and not just say yes all the time, because yes always takes you to a new place. But I got to start to be able to hone in on the right yeses. And I don't know if there are many people out there like that, but and again, this goes back to my central nature. I'm a 100% all in person. And I may have to learn just how to keep it at 100% in some ways, but dial it back a little and make sure that I'm going down the best roads.
And that what you say yes to, would you say that that's more of a gut feeling, just like when it's time to go and you got to go, or is it when it comes to, maybe more strategic business decisions, do you navigate your decision making differently?
I got to learn how to say no better. I mean, and part of it is like what transpired because of my relationship with Alex and where that journey took me, because now I've got a ton of emails coming in at me every day from all over the world. And some are so kind, they're inviting me, and that's all wonderful. And I ask for them. I ask people, send me a picture where you listen to Big Questions. That's the name of my podcast. And that kind of fuels my curiosity. At the same time, with that comes a lot of requests. Could you read my book? Could you listen to my podcast? And if I fulfilled all these requests, I would have not a second for myself in the day. So I got to learn, okay, how do I say yes when I need to say yes? And how do I nicely explain why I can't do it when I need to say no? This is just an issue that's come to me pretty recently, and I'm trying to figure it out.
I was just having a conversation with a few friends recently, and we were discussing how the romanticism of the grind and the hustle and the chase and, that startup lifestyle may be evolving and potentially dissipating a little bit in exchange for craving for more white space and just a little less technology, maybe. Like if we come in full circle here. What do you think about that?
Well, one of the entrepreneurs I was talking to when I was explaining, and again, like Alex may have introduced me to Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and all these other avenues, but I haven't like mastered all of them. And I'm just in a place where I gotta figure out how to do so many new things because it's all new. You're an entrepreneur, and now I got to figure out, all right, making a video, even if it's an Instagram story. How do you shoot it? How's the lighting? The next thing is, okay, what about sales? I've never sold anything in my life. Now I got to figure out like strategies on how to sell these workshops. I've got to go out and talk to salespeople and ask them, how do you do it? Because when I was young and going to journalism school, I was told you are getting a chance to do what you love, and that is to write and report. And in exchange for that, you're not allowed to go onto the other side of the wall. And by that, I mean where they were selling, marketing, doing promotion. And, I was made to feel like I would be humiliated and basically thrown out of what I loved if I crossed the wall. Now, because of what's happened to society, there is no more wall. But I don't know how to do any of that stuff.
But Cal, you've been selling since you were sitting on that bus looking for a place to sleep, right? So is it just the description of what you do?
All the salesmen start laughing at me. They just say, Cal, no, don't give us that. You are a salesman. And okay, if that's the case, I may be a salesman, but that doesn't mean like I am like completely comfortable knowing that I have to sell a product that I'm putting out. Now I got a manager. We got Kevin, the manager, who kind of does that stuff. More than kind of, he does that stuff. But it's more than that. It's really me understanding. I'll give you a perfect example, Amy Jo. And this happened 2 years ago, and it'll immediately explain where I was on this journey. I am at a seminar. It was for healthy eating and a healthy lifestyle. And sitting next to me at the table is the owner actually they were two owners, the owner and his wife of a major like food corporation. And all I had to do was just turn to this person and let them know, hey, I speak, I give workshops. And if they wanted to have me, great. I could not even bring up the fact that that's what I was doing. I was still on the other side of that wall. It's taken me 2 years to smash that wall down to get to the point where I could feel flexible enough to just calmly tell people what I do. It's something that I've been wrapped up in. I'm trying to free myself. And anybody who's coming over that bridge, they may find that they're being held back by things that they just weren't counting on. And you've got to learn to push through that. But again, it gets to that question of asking yourself, what do I do? And if I'm to believe you, I do sell myself. So why couldn't I sell my product?
It's so cool to hear your perspective and what it's been like for you to go through this process, because it's all an inside job. Yeah, really, right? It seems like there's just been a shift in distribution of your why and your who a little bit, but it's all the same as it used to be. So it's really neat to see that evolution and that transformation. So I'm just super inspired. Well, I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you. Are you game?
Sure.
Okay. What keeps you up at night, Cal?
My prostate.
Okay. It is what it is, right?
You reach a certain age, and if you're male, you're going to get up a couple times a night.
And all-time favorite book? I know this is a tough one.
Not really. 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I think it's one of the great books ever written.
Oh, good. Pirates or ninjas? Who's tougher and why?
You know what? I had a ninja teach me how to climb a rope. And it was an amazing experience. I entered these Spartan obstacle races over the last year. Do you ever hear of Spartan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so basically, for anyone who hasn't, it's obstacle racing, kind of military style. They have races. For starters, you do a sprint. It's like 3 to 5 miles. A lot of times they're in stadiums, in downtown locations. Then there's supers. Those go about 8 miles, and you're climbing walls, climbing ropes, crawling under barbed wire. You're doing a lot of exercises or obstacles that require you to be able to like hang by your hands for a minute or longer, and sort of like monkey bars when you were kids. Only the monkey bars go a long distance on a Spartan obstacle course. And so in the last year, I started doing this, and I've kept on getting better and better. I've done those 3 races. The Beast is 14 miles with more than 30 obstacles. We just finished that one, and you're like crawling through mud. It took me like 7 hours. And the point I bring up is I was having trouble climbing to the top of a rope. And a ninja just pulled me aside one day, and he said, "Let me show you how to do it." And in like 8 minutes, he had me to the top of the rope just with technique. So I side with the ninjas.
Yeah, rightfully so. That's some really good backup there for your answer. So it was all technique.
Well, you needed the strength to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. But once he applied the right technique, then it became easy. I was like laughing getting to the top.
Oh, that's awesome. And final question, Cal, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Buy Red Hat when it's at 3.
Listen to that gut.
Listen to your gut. Your gut very rarely goes wrong. And if it does go wrong, then it learns its lesson and it won't go wrong next time.
It learns the hard way, right? Oh, wow. Oh, Cal, your zest for life and your energy is contagious, and I just adore you and have so much respect for you. Thank you for sharing your time. I can't wait for our breakfast date. And everybody make sure that you go and catch Cal on the daily over at Big Questions. You can catch up on his podcast if you haven't dug in yet. It's amazing to just listen and learn. So thank you for your time.
Well, this has been an absolute delight. You've got a seat waiting for you at Larry King's breakfast table. Just let me know well in advance when you're coming, and you will be treated like royalty that you are.
Oh, thank you. I'll be ready. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?